Mazda has an all-new 3-row crossover to replace the CX-9, and they're calling it the CX-90, which means it's 10 times better than the outgoing car. Here it is. The wheelbase of the CX-90 is 7.4 inches longer than the outgoing CX-9, which gives you a lot more space in the third row and in the cargo area. That added space has allowed Mazda to add an optional 3-seat configuration for the third row. But as it's only an option and there are also optional captain's chairs for the second row, means that you can get the CX-90 in either a 6, 7, or 8-seat configuration. In fact, there are 11 different configurations of the CX-90, with the top trim, most expensive version going for $60,000. To justify that price, Mazda did not mess around with the powertrains. You get either a plug-in hybrid vehicle with about 25 miles of all-electric driving and 320 horsepower with the combined 4-cylinder and electric motor, or you get a 3.3-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder that makes up to 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. In terms of the design, Mazda went with a very elegant, urban look in contrast to the heavily plastic-cladded Mazda CX-30 and CX-50. I think this looks a lot better.
In my eyes, the CX-90 Turbo S Premium Plus is the best looking of the bunch. It's also the most expensive of the bunch, with its body-colored fender flares and its very luxurious looking inline 6 badge.
Woe is saving the environment. Inside, the elegant design language continues. You get a 12.25-inch infotainment system, which is very clear and crisp, and is a touchscreen when you're using Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But when you go into Mazda's native system, it will not accept touch, and you must use the rotary dial, because Mazda believes that's safer. And when you are in CarPlay, you can also use the rotary dial if you prefer. You also get a fully digital instrument cluster, which is again very crisp and clear, and you get a heads-up display. There's also a panoramic sunroof, and although these seats are a little boring with just the black and the bronze trim, they do have some really stellar interiors, including a caramel and a white interior that really show off the CX-90's design.
All right, driving the turbocharged inline 6 3.3 liter. Solid sounding engine for sure, and gosh, I love this caramel interior that this Premium Plus Turbo S has. So there's two different powertrain specs on offer for the 3.3 liter inline 6. You can get the base one, which gets about 280 horsepower on normal fuel, or you can get the Turbo S version, which gets 320 horsepower on normal fuel and 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque on premium fuel. Mazda always gives their figures in premium fuel to make them sound cooler and sportier. But this is a solid engine, this Turbo S version of the 3.3 liter. It really does pull. It's an adequate power for the vehicle, and it's not the most sporty, however. I've definitely been in sportier engines. It can take a while to kind of kick down and get going, but if you put your foot down, you're gonna get the power that you want. Floor it. Okay, so it took a second and then it kicked in. Okay. And then you really start to feel the power. So it feels comparable to like an Acura MDX's powertrain. It feels pretty similar to that, I think. I mean, I know it is more potent in horsepower wise, and you can kind of feel that difference, but if you've ever driven an Acura MDX, this feels very similar in terms of the performance the engine is giving, but this does handle really, really well. The amount of body roll,
turn right.
The amount of body roll that the CX-90 has is very impressive given the size of this vehicle. So I'm gonna pass this car. Oh yeah, lots of passing speed, really easy. It just kind of gets up and goes. So it's a really reassuring powertrain, and I'm really happy that Mazda didn't incorporate a just base 4-cylinder like kind of all of the competitors have. You either get this 3.3 liter inline 6. The base engine is slightly less powerful than this Turbo S, but you either get an inline 6 or you get a plug-in hybrid, and you're gonna get almost 300 horsepower no matter what, and that's really nice. And especially in this Turbo S, it's a reassuring powertrain. It gets you where you need to go. It has enough power for everything you want to do. That overtake was very, very easy. Yeah, taking these corners with some speed, the CX-90 stays really composed. It doesn't lean too much in the bends, even though it looks like a
taller car. I think just the styling of this, especially head-on, makes it look like a very tall vehicle. It still handles really well, much better than the Toyota Highlander hybrid I was driving last week, and it does give a sporty feel as you're driving. The steering wheel is also very comfortable to grip, and when you turn in, it's very direct. You really have a good sense of what the car is doing, and yeah, there's some body roll. You can't mask the fact that this is a 3-row SUV, but for a 3-row midsize SUV, it's very composed on these sweeping corners. All right, driving the plug-in hybrid CX-90, and Mazda expects about 25% of CX-90 sold to be the plug-in hybrid version, but actually they're saying they're getting a lot of demand for it, so they might have to increase that figure. But I think this is actually a really solid powertrain. Now, 25 miles isn't a whole lot, but it is a very punchy engine and electric combination, and I really like how it's delivered. The 4-cylinder is not too coarse at all, and in combination with that electric motor and the battery pack, it feels really powerful, and it has some get up and go that the 3.3 liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder doesn't seem to offer as readily. That one takes a little more time to spool up and to get going, but this one kind of gets all the grunt right away, and you really feel the force of the powertrain, the 320 horsepower altogether. I kind of find myself liking this version, this powertrain, a little better than that 3.3 inline 6. Now, don't get me wrong, the 3.3 is a great engine and I do really like it, but I just think the plug-in hybrid works a little better with this vehicle and what it is designed to do. You know, this is going to be running into town, grabbing groceries, running errands, commuting to work, and you'll be able to drive in electric only mode for most of that. Yet it isn't compromised by then a sluggish powertrain ever. This is still a very powerful vehicle with 320 horsepower, and I like how it's delivered. It is very punchy and it really does get up and go. And I've been averaging 38.1 miles per gallon, which is pretty good for a 3-row midsize SUV. And I think this is the one to get. I don't know if Mazda changed the suspension setup at all between the plug-in hybrid and the inline 6, but I think this one rides just a tad better. I think the Turbo S 3.3 liter inline 6 that I drove, you know, that is the more driver's car of the 11 options you can get. That one is the most driver oriented, and I think the suspension was just a little more firm than I would want in a 3-row midsize SUV. And I think the suspension on this and just the overall package of this seems to is tailored a little better towards the goal of this vehicle. Now, that being said, you can't go wrong with either powertrain or really any setup of the CX-90. It's a great car. It's a little smaller than the competition for sure, but I think Mazda did a good job bridging the gap between regular vehicles and luxury vehicles, and I'm a big fan of the CX-90.